Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it.
From the Groovy Remains production team studios in the Netherlands, my name is Mixmaster G and welcome to this live stream. My mission is not to sell you guys as many apps as I can. No, my mission is to educate and teach you about collection management and conversion for DJs, so you can have more time for the fun and creative part of being a DJ. Usually in this stream we geek out totally. We have it about technology for DJs and stuff like that. However, this week I will have a special guest. More about that in a moment, because before we start there is a little tiny geeky thing we have to discuss, which just happened today. And that new thing is that Pioneer DJ introduced a brand new subscription plan to Rekordbox, named Rekordbox Professional. Let me quickly show you guys what that is all about, because for some it might be a blessing in disguise. That's also the reason why, of course, I want to talk about it. And if I prepare my stuff better, then it would be already on my screen, but I had to find it myself. That's the one we are talking about, Rekordbox Professional. It will set you back 30 bucks a month. However, what they claim is that it will have unlimited Dropbox storage, which means you finally are no longer limited by the amount of storage you have in Dropbox. How unlimited is still pending. My contacts at Pioneer DJ didn't really want to tell me how unlimited it is, because usually there is this fair use policy involved, but you never know. So I hope that that will be unlimited for everybody forever. Another thing that they mention is that Rekordbox will now automatically upload your tracks to the Dropbox cloud. Usually you had to do that manually by clicking on it and uploading it to the cloud. That is supposed to be an all automatic system right now. This just came out this morning, so stick with me. I have to test it myself. I have to look into it myself, but because I had a guest on, I didn't really have time, but I didn't want to withhold it from you guys. With this introduction came a new Rekordbox version, Rekordbox 6.5.3, that basically only enables this professional plan. What everybody is hoping, hey Mixmaster G, does it finally fix syncing to a FAT formatted USB? No, that is not fixed in that particular release. However, the fix that I told you about, the fix that I posted on the YouTube channel, still works even with Rekordbox 6.5.3. All right, enough about technology, more about who I have with me today. With me is a Dutch comedian named Wouter Monden. That name might not ring a bell at the international audience I usually have, but Wouter is the winner of the Cultural Comedy Awards in 2010. He also did other comedian festivals like Kamerette. He has a weekly radio show on one of the Dutch radio stations. He was in the writing room of various comedy programs, but Wouter is also a stand-up comedian and he has his own theater shows. Now, this stand-up comedian stuff that Wouter does, he has a podcast about it. But first, let me introduce Wouter. This is Wouter. Wouter, please say hi.
Hi everyone, my name is Wouter. Nice to be here. I feel sorry for being here with everyone wanting to know stuff about the Pioneer, and now I'm on and you don't get to talk about the Pioneer stuff.
Well, the most important part, it wasn't that big a deal. It is and isn't a big deal. It is like, all right, we now have a car with tires that don't go flat, period. There is not much more to tell about it. So please don't feel bad about that, Wouter. The reason why I invited a comedian in a tech geek show might be a question mark to a lot of you guys. So let me explain that. Wouter has his podcast named the Elektra podcast. And if you are Dutch, because that particular podcast is in Dutch, I can highly recommend it. It has given me hours and hours of great times. Wouter, can you quickly introduce what the Elektra podcast is all about to the people who don't know it?
Oh yeah, sure. It's very easy. It's me talking to other comedians about their worst gigs they ever had. Think about, basic stuff like microphones that don't work to crowds walking out, people having heart attacks, everything comes by. There's 2 episodes in English. There's one with Stuart Goldsmith, an English comedian, and there's one with Glenn Wool, who's from Canada. And Glenn Wool told a story about how he started out in the north of Canada, where they had bars that weren't allowed to stay open very late unless they had entertainment. And comedy was the most cheap form of entertainment they could find, so they would begrudgingly have comedy nights.
All right, I will make sure that I share those links in the comments under this video if you watch it on VOD. If you watch it on VOD, why is that? Why don't you join us live? Because what we are hoping for while we are discussing our stuff is that you guys want to share your horror stories, your things that absolutely went south with us in the chat. And we would be happy to tell about those stories as well. Because that is what Wouter's podcast is all about. The stuff that completely went off the rail for various reasons. And while I was listening to that podcast, I realized myself, those comedians and us DJs have a lot in common. Not only from the horrors we face, but also from the things we find on our way. So I reached out to Wouter and told him, listen Wouter, this is going to be a huge experiment. I'm just a very small tech nerdish broadcaster who streams every week for DJs with help wherever I can give it. But I want to see what happens if a comedian on one side and a DJ on the other side talk to each other about their professions, and how much they have in common and how much they might not have in common. I don't know. We just talked a little bit. We know that there are things in common, but we will see what happens. This is like my DJ sets and like Wouter's stand-up shows, completely jazzing away, and we just see what will happen on the road. Before we start there, let me quickly tell you guys and tell Wouter what, in my opinion, and that's a personal opinion, so feel free to fire away if you want to, makes a DJ a DJ. And I think that the drive of a DJ should, of course, be a love for music. If you don't have a love for music, what the hell are you doing in this profession? And what always drove me as a DJ was making people dance. If I just saw people sitting, chatting to each other, then I had a shitty evening, because that was not what I was intending to do. I wanted to see people dance. I wanted to see them invite others to the dance floor. I wanted to make a show, really. And if that didn't work, then I had a bad evening. So for me, DJ is someone who really loves music and really wants to make people dance, or at least have them knobbing their hands on the beat, because I'm not a dancer myself, so I cannot blame everybody. But
that's my dance as well. This is me dancing.
Yes, I will always nod my head just to show that I appreciate whatever the guy is doing who makes the music. So that for me is very short. What is a DJ? Wouter, what in your opinion makes a comedian a comedian?
Oh, good question. I think it's basically the same. It's someone who goes on stage and talks about his own life or his views on life, and with the goal to make people laugh or make them think about it, but essentially to make them laugh. And I think that's, it's pretty much like DJing, what you said. If people just keep sitting down, not responding, that's horrible. If you tell jokes or you tell a funny story and people don't respond, they don't laugh, that's horrible. So a comedian is someone who gets on stage, talks about stuff and hopes people laugh, because he would love to cry about it.
So to put it very flat, to make it very simple, oversimplify it, if you didn't hear a laugh in the audience, then your performance was not what you were hoping it would be.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Is the laugh, is that the measurement of how well a gig went?
Yeah, because in the end, it's a comedy show. People come to laugh. If you don't laugh, you're not having fun. Of course, you can do a bit that might be a bit longer, or that may be a bit serious, or has critique in it. But in the end, you want them to laugh and have a good time. So if they don't do that, you're screwed.
Yeah, totally clear. Then us DJs, because stand-up comedians, if I'm correct, they are often in a lineup. It's not very often that you have the stage for yourself. Usually you are number 3, number 4, number whatever in a lineup shared with other comedians.
Yeah.
Is there always a particular order in that lineup, or is that just whatever the booker likes?
Well, to a certain degree, because you always have the MC, the master of ceremonies. He's the host. He presents the entire show. Usually on a typical night, you'll have 2 acts before the break. Then after the break, you might have a comedian doing, a newer comedian doing 8 to 10 minutes. And then you have the headliner.
Right, headliner near the end. That is,
yeah.
Usually that is for festival DJs the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
You have the okay-ish DJs at the start. Then there might be when it's dinner time or whatever the time frame is for the festival, you have the lesser known DJs, and then at the end of the evening you have the headliner at the height of the festival.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that at a festival during dinner time.
Yeah, it's even worse. It's even worse. We both just agreed, because this would have been the weekend Lowlands was in the Netherlands, and I have my tickets, and I'm sure that somehow Wouter would be there too.
Oh yeah.
But if you look at the programming of Lowlands, for instance, it is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those are the 3 Lowlands days. On Friday you have some good names that you want to see. Then on Friday, you have okay-ish names. Or sorry, on Friday you have the good names. On Saturday you have the okay-ish names. Of course, there is always a headliner there at the end that you say, all right, I want to see that guy or that girl. But The rest is okay. And then Sunday, they blow it away. To make sure that you come in on Friday, you stay on Saturday, and you leave at the end of Sunday. So
and well, the important thing to note there is they don't sell day tickets.
no.
So you have to stay the entire weekend.
Yeah, but that is a personal thing of mine. I don't go to any festival that sells day tickets. I'm not for the day tickets, and you won't find me on the glamping either. I am in the crowd, in my own tent, on the camping, because for me that is the only real festival experience. And if it's going to rain and we are all muddy, we are all muddy. And I don't want to have people pop up at the afternoon who are completely tidy and tied up because they just had the ticket for that particular day. I go to festivals when they only have festival tickets and no day tickets. I don't go to Pink Pop, for instance, because that sells day tickets. And, or what's even worse with festivals that have day tickets, let's say you have a day ticket for the Red Hot Chili Peppers because you want to see them. And you take your seat with you, and early in the morning, because you are not on the camping, so you go early in the morning, you put your seat in front of the main stage. You are going to sit there. You really don't care who are on that main stage because you are waiting in front of the main stage for the Red Hot Chili Peppers to begin. I don't like that kind of stuff, so no festivals with day tickets for me. But again, that is strictly personal, so don't get me on that. But there is indeed a certain order with DJs as well. Now, the problem, and last week we had this in the stream, I had this question from a DJ who asked me, all right, Mixmaster G, how do you cooperate with other DJs in your lineup? Of course, comedians always have their jokes, and I hope that they don't steal each other jokes.
Oh no,
that will be. However,
that's off limits.
With things like SoundCloud and Mixcloud, it is very easy to maybe accidentally steal each other remixes. Because if I look at myself, if I go on SoundCloud and I hear a remix that I like, often I forget who made the remix if they didn't tag it correctly. I don't know who made that remix, I just like it. So that is always a little bit of a thing. How are you working with that? But the biggest problem I wanted to discuss with you, Wouter, is if you are in the mediocre batch, in the front batch, in the okay batch, on a comedy lineup or in a DJ lineup, and the person before you went on stage, really blew the roof off. They knocked it out of the ballpark. Yeah. In our terms, they played all the bangers at the right time. They had the good remixes. The crowd was really going furious. The crowd will be empty because all their energy is lost, and they really have to recover a little bit before they can go on. How do you do that?
Yeah.
In comedy terms, if somebody really...
I see where you're going, but I think there's a big difference. Well, let me tell you two things. If I'm on, let's say, second, and the guy who's on, or girl who's on first, really rocks the show and everyone loves it, then I hope the MC, the compere, does their job properly and takes his time to get the room to cool down again, so I can start at base level and play my own show. That's an important task for the host of the evening to fulfill. Because what they might do is like, oh, that was fantastic, and here's the next act. And then you get on, and the crowd expects you to continue riding that same wave, and you can't because you're a different comedian doing different stuff. But I think a very important difference between comedians and DJs, as you said, the DJ before you might have played all the big bangers and all the songs of that moment. We don't have that. You know, I might have a comedian talking about the same topics or about the same news, but he or she is never going to do the exact same jokes as I'm going to do. Whereas a DJ, you might think, oh, fuck, I wanted to play that song. And you can't play that song, and I guess you're not even going to do a remix of that same song because everyone think, oh yeah, we just heard that song, or we just heard that song in another remix.
All right, so if I translate that correctly, it is the job of a good MC to just settle things down, to make sure that the transition from the guy who just broke the room to the next person is a smooth one, and that he just levels it out, settles it down.
And if he didn't do that, then it's up to you. Then you have to take the energy back a bit, or to do something entirely different than the act before you did, to clearly establish that, hey, here's a new comedian, I'm someone different, I'm doing different jokes in a different style. Get that message across, then get them to like you, and then do your own stuff.
Yeah, like I said, we had this question last week in the stream where I mentioned it, that when I have somebody in front of me, first of all, I'm from the generation that started at 10 p.m. I went through to 6 a.m. I didn't have any lineup. I was the guy who did the music. I was the DJ, period. Nowadays it is different. However, if I am in the situation that I'm in a lineup and the guy in front of me really made an impact, then I'm willing to take it all the way down. Just start from the base. Then I want to clear the dance floor for a moment so I can tell my own story and do it my own way.
Exactly the same thing.
But it really takes courage to do that, because as a DJ, you want to have that floor filled. And if you deliberately have to clear that floor, that is going against everything you stand for. And I can imagine it's the same thing with the comedian. If the crowd is completely warmed up, more than warmed up, that you want to continue to ride that wave.
Oh yeah, and it's very, I don't know the word, but it's very tempting to try and emulate the style of the one before you, or to continue in that manner because you think, ooh, the crowd loves this, I'm going to do more of that style. But you are not the comedian before you, or you are not the DJ who was playing before you.
I understand.
So you have to make that switch.
Let me quickly acknowledge some people in the chat. Eddie, welcome to the chat, my friend. Good to see you again.
Hi, Eddie.
And Anthony, good to see you. They even greet you, Wouter, so you are recognized as well. For everybody in the chat, if you've got stories you want to share with us, stories about your DJ life, throw them in the chat. We are all open for that. We are not open for technical questions today. That will be next week with my pleasure. But for today, it will be just the things that DJs and comedians have in common.
Yes,
now,
give horror stories. I've heard all the comedy horror stories, and I'm really looking forward to DJ horror stories.
We will have certain one of them as well. Now, you have different kind of comedians. We recognize different kind of DJs. For instance, we have the club DJ, we have the festival DJ. As a Dutch guy, we have the ski hut DJs, we have the wedding DJs. All those DJs are different professions. Everybody in the stream knows I'm not a fan of the term DJ producer, because in my book there are only a few guys who really are both a great DJ and a great producer. Usually there are just one of them and not both combined, so I really don't like that term. But you have different DJs and they serve different purposes. How is that in the comedian world? Do you have different kind of comedians?
Yeah, it's more or less the same. Because, for example, you've got road comics. It's more an American term, I guess, than a Dutch. But road comics are typically comedians who have a set of, say, 15 to 20 minutes, and they just go from town to town, or from club to club, or comedy show to comedy show, and they do the same set everywhere. And they're pretty interchangeable. But you've also got comics who are really unique and have a really unique style, and that's what they do. And then you've got what you call the wedding DJs. And I'm sorry if I'm insulting someone, but I'm guessing it's a bit hacky, because at a wedding you don't play what you want to play. You don't play the music you want people to hear. You play what the crowd wants to hear, and that's fine. But there's not much artistic value to that. We've got hacky comedians who'll just say anything to get a laugh out of a crowd, rather than talking about stuff they find important or that, you know, they've had to deal with in their life. So you've got the different styles of comedians, and I think, you know, they go along the same lines.
Well, I really have to stand up for the wedding DJ community here.
Sorry.
Because you are absolutely correct if you say, all right, you are pretty limited about what you can do in wedding environment at a wedding event because...
Can I say one thing about it?
Sure,
Because
sure.
what I said, I think there are a lot of people, even though I was downplaying it, who couldn't do that job. Because I do think you have to be good to do it.
That was not where I'm going to.
Okay.
What I'm going to is that, and that will also go a little bit to the next subject I had in mind for this. Of course, you will have, if you are a wedding DJ and you prepare well, you are going to sit down with the couple and you try to get a hang of what is their taste in music and are there off-limit tracks, are the things they really, really, really want to hear. But then it is to the skills of the wedding DJ, how he is going to bring those tracks, how he is going to mix those tracks. Of course, a good wedding DJ will prevent that certain tracks are being played if he knows this ain't gonna land, this ain't gonna work. A good wedding DJ friend of mine, Nick Spinelli, just mentioned it the other day. The Weeknd makes great tunes. I really like a lot of tracks of The Weeknd. But if you put on Blinding Light in one, it doesn't matter whatever environment, and especially on a wedding, it will go flat. Everybody knows that track. You can mix it in 1,000 ways, but people will not dance to it because it's not really a danceable track. No. It is too quick and it is a weird track. On the other hand, if you take a random Michael Jackson track, that will always land if you are allowed to play that, because then there are other things. If you are not in California, you can play it in Holland, you can play it fine. If you are in California, make sure you check with the couple, because otherwise they might crucify you. You never know.
Can I ask you one thing though? Because sure. I really like the fact of, you know, forbidden tracks at a wedding. And I can understand, I would have, you know, if I do my wedding all over, I'd have some tracks and I'd tell a DJ, please do not play these songs. But what do you do if they give you a track and then you know, several guests in the party come up to you and say, hey, could you play this track? I really love it.
Good question, Wouter. Again, I'm not getting this wisdom from myself. I'm not a wedding DJ. I'm getting this from Nick Spinelli. If you not know who Nick Spinelli is, follow him on YouTube. He does the same time as I do his weekly stream. So make sure that you watch mine first, and then you can get Nick's back in the VOD. But Nick was talking about this exact same problem. What to do if you have a list, you have sit down with the couple, you professional DJs in the wedding industry know this, you have this list and you talk with, all right, that track, that don't, that, and somebody, Aunt Susie comes up, who is clearly the very rich aunt in the family and might have paid for this entire wedding altogether because it was her only nephew who was going to marry, is coming up and is going to ask this really cheesy song that is on the do not playlist. What do you do?
Paradise by the Dashboard Light.
You can play that just fine.
But would be on mine not playing this.
If it's on your... the rule of thumb is the couple is leading in this. They hired you to give them the best day in their lives, or one of the best days in their lives. So the least thing you can do is just acknowledge their request of not playing certain songs if they are very strong about it. If I'm playing at Wouter's wedding and Wouter tells me, all right, Pete, whatever you do, no Paradise by the Dashboard Light, then it's not going to be Paradise by the Dashboard Light ever. Period. Doesn't matter who is going to ask for it. If it is the manager of the venue, we are not going to play it because the couple is leading, the couple hired you, you are there to make the best day of the couple's life. That means you will obey to their rules. You have accepted those rules because you talk with them. Of course, if I'm going to sit down with Wouter in preparation to his wedding and he tells me, I don't want to have Paradise by the Dashboard Light, then I tell him, well, during dinner, it is a very good track to hear. Everybody knows it. Going to nod a little bit about it. They're all going to pray that it doesn't have the baseball sequence in it because we all hate that. but stuff like that. So that is also your job as a wedding DJ. Talk about why you think that a certain track is worth to reconsider on the do playlist, and exactly the vice versa thing. In the States, they have this thing called dirty versus clean tracks. We are not used to that in the Netherlands. We can just say fuck and shit all over the place. And
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. So nobody gives a shit. In the States, this is a little bit different, especially during weddings where there might be little children there. Then sometimes they really want to have the clean edits only, or you have to use the backspin to make it a clean edit. That is all to the couple. So the couple decides on that, and they tell you what to do or not to do.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because I can imagine if you're DJing at a wedding and it's a nice party and people are dancing and having fun, and you've sat down with a couple, you have your list and you know what songs not to play, but you just, you get caught up in the moment and you think, oh, but this is really the right track the crowd needs to hear right now. You put it on, and the moment you put the needle down, you realize this is on the do not playlist. What do? Do you cut the song?
You immediately mix out.
Yeah.
You do. I'm not
because that must be an awful moment.
That will most certainly happen. And you just mix out. That is one of the reasons why every wedding DJ should know how to mix, how to make blends, how to have this special playlist or create with, I immediately want to skip to that playlist and take a random track out of it because I'm in an emergency here. Have that emergency playlist and you'll be fine. Most people will not even notice it. It is just how you... It comes back to your DJ skills. It always comes back to your DJ skills. Can you beat match? Can you quickly mix in, mix out? That's all there is to it. Talking about lists. Of course, if you are a club DJ, like I used to be, then you are faced with requests. And I can imagine that if you are an event comedian, if you are hired by a company to make their event a little bit more cheerful, because otherwise it was dull as hell.
Yep.
How do you go about that? I think it works a little bit like how the wedding couple and the wedding DJ talk. So tell me about that, Wouter. What do you do if you are hired to do a corporate gig?
Yeah, if you're hired to do a corporate gig, usually they want you to write specifically for that gig. And in my opinion, that's really the only way to make those gigs work, because you can do your regular material and it's not going to work. Even though it works every night in a comedy club, it's not going to work at a comedy gig. So what you usually do is you go over there, or you get on the phone, get on Zoom, whatever. You get loads of information, and then you rework that information into material that's relatable to them. And when I started out, I found that very hard, because they always tell you very, very boring stories. It's like, oh yeah, and you really have to, we have to tell you about the one time when Claudia came in and she brought me coffee and she forgot the sugar, and that was hilarious. So still to this day we say, hey Claudia, don't forget the sugar. And you think, oh my God, this is a terrible story. I wasn't even there. Why do you want me to tell this boring story? And I wouldn't tell the story. And now I know that the best thing I can do is to do my preparations, to write material for that show, come on stage and say, it's nice to be here. Well, I came here, someone offered me coffee and I got it, and there was no sugar. Claudia, don't forget the sugar. The crowd will go wild for some reason. They love it.
All right, so cheesy or not, you still blend it in.
Yeah, and do what they want to hear. And I think that that goes the same for DJs. Doesn't matter what you think about it. Do what they want to hear. They're paying you to do that.
It depends on the kind of, but for a wedding DJ for sure, and for club DJs most of the time as well. One thing that in America is really getting big these days is bottle service DJ. You have this club, most is seated. somebody on a table orders a bottle of champagne or God know what, and then as a DJ you are supposed to shout out that person and do a request for him, etc., etc. So,
oh my God, that is so incredibly vain.
it is
It's
really,
horrible.
really. I know DJs in America who are friends of mine who say, "All right, is it a club with bottle service? Not for me. I'm gone." So I can completely understand, because I wouldn't work with that either. You are just a glorified Spotify list at that moment, who just is there to make somebody.
Yeah, but if that club is your chance to step up to be a club DJ,
And that is a subject I wanted to touch with you about as well, because one of the big problems these days is, maybe it's for comedians as well, but for us DJs, it feels like the whole world is a DJ.
yeah.
If I talk to anybody,
Oh, go on Twitter. The whole world's a comedian.
yeah,
Just not very good ones.
exactly the same thing. So that's thing number one. And you said, especially not a very good one, but most of them don't realize that they are not a very good one, which means that they are selling themselves as a DJ. How do comedians go about getting their first bookings? How do you get noticed? How did you, Wouter, get noticed in a form that you can be in a lineup with other comedians, or even to the point that you have your own theater show?
Well, it's just, getting out there, getting stage time. And the type of gigs that we talk a lot about in my podcast are shitty gigs, in bars with hardly any people there to see the show. But that's where you start out. That's the first chances you get to do what you do in front of a crowd. And I think that goes the same for DJing. And I would say to either a comedian or a DJ, do all those gigs that you need to do, and try to learn from it. But as soon as you can do without them, stop doing them, and only do the ones that are worthwhile and that can help you either grow as an artist or are respectful to what you do as an artist.
Well, that's of course, maybe I'm misunderstand this. That sounds easier for comedians than for DJs, because if a DJ walks in a club or in a bar, for heaven's sake, and say to the manager there, "Listen, I'm a DJ, can I play 30 minutes?" Then you are faced with two problems. First of all, there is already a DJ there, most likely, especially when you ask that. And that DJ is not going to say, "All right, listen, here, you got my equipment, 30 minutes, go ahead." While for a comedian, you might be part of a lineup, which might be easier.
Well, I know a good example. You, every now and again, I do live recordings of the podcast. You visited one the other day with a very famous comedian who basically started stand-up comedy single-handed in Holland. And he said, when we started out, I would go to bars and I would say, "Hey, do you have a slow night? Let's say a Wednesday or a Tuesday even, or a Thursday, I don't know. Do you have a slow night? And is it okay if we come in and do our comedy show?" I can imagine, I don't know if that's, if people are up to that, but I can imagine if you're starting out that you could say, can I DJ the Tuesday night or the Sunday afternoon? And, just work your ass off and get people to notice you. And I'm guessing if you do a good job, that bar owner might say, "Hey, people really like the way you're playing. Why don't you come and do this on a Friday night or a Saturday night?" Or, our regular DJ drops out or he needs someone to stand in. Could you fill his place? I don't know if that's possible. I don't know the first thing about DJing.
I think that's actually a very good idea. Let's face it, that is how I started out. When I was a little boy, can you imagine? I just walked to places where I knew there were a lot of young people around and just talked to them. Just said, "All right, can I just play records here? Why not?" There was no DJ in that day. But I still can imagine that there are places in my home city of Leiden where I can walk in and say, "All right, guys, you have a bar here. You have a Spotify list. Are you okay with me just playing some tunes? Just playing some tunes and see what happens on indeed a very slow night. Don't do that on the big night. and maybe they will say yes. I think.
And you can cheat. You can invite friends to come along, not have anyone know they're your friends, and they can tell the bartender, "Ooh, I like the music you're having on."
You see, that's from the pro. This is coming from the pro, my friend.
But another tip, and you mentioned it before, where you said, it comes down to your mixing skills. DJing is something I think you can, the skills and the techniques itself, you can practice at home. You don't need the laugh that we do as a response. So you can work your ass off at home to be so good that if you get the chance to do your stuff anywhere, that you actually might have a chance that people notice you because they realize, hey, this music is, it feels like it's going on the entire time without me noticing there's a, hard cut between songs.
Let me get you in a little DJ secret. Please keep this under ourselves. Track selection is far more important than whatever DJ skills you might have. You can be world's best scratcher ever. You can have flawless transitions each and every time. But your track selection is leading.
Listen to him, not to me.
The only guys who will notice, and girls by the way, who will notice that you are an excellent mixing DJ
are other DJs.
So that's how it works. Anthony Brown is telling us, back in the 80s, was asked to remix an Irish folk song with hip-hop style. Knew a guy who did. Later was asked to do a show. Eddie and I met at the theater with 1210s. The guy was Irish dancing. So basically we freestyled it, but the track was on reel to reel. During the comedy show, I pressed play way too early. It was on a comedy show. No place on stage to hide, but was lucky the sound engineer came down. All right, so you were at the comedy show and you pressed play too early. Happened to me countless times, Anthony, don't mention it. That is, I usually press play way too early, and that is not from my girlfriend. All right, so we have covered that part. Then if you have those corporate gigs, because that was where we're coming from, then I imagine you get keywords, or is it just very specific indeed, the no sugar with the coffee routine, or do they just give it? And more important, are there then forbidden words? Are there things that you are not allowed to do at all?
Well, forbidden stuff basically comes down to common sense.
All right.
At a corporate gig, you're not going to do explicit material about sex or very political stuff or very religious stuff. It's like basically, it's like your mom's birthday. That, stay away from those subjects to keep it nice. Every now and again, they'll have either a colleague who left or a director or a CEO who did something that you can't mention, which is horrible. If they tell us stuff, you can't talk about this. That's like giving us a big sign saying, please talk about this, because everyone in the office, they all know the story and they want to hear about the story. So it's very nice if you can, without going into it in detail, but still touch on the subject, and you can feel them, just letting go of all the attention, like, he knows and he made a joke about it, we can do it. You don't get keywords. You can use, certain themes if you feel that they are relevant within the company. But usually because I used to do corporate gigs, and I would try to, mix in my own material because it fills up the time. And that wasn't a big success. And then I quit doing them for a whole time because I didn't like doing them and they made me really unhappy. And now I do them, but I really use the stuff they want to hear, and I do jokes about that because that works. And you can what every office now has, that no one has their own desk anymore, and they have to switch every day. That's a theme that I will ask about. It's like, hey, do you have that thing where everyone has to switch desks every day and no one has their own seat anymore? Like, yeah, we have that. It's like, okay, good, because I've done stuff about that before, and I can shove this in.
He has canned jokes about that, ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, I know from the Elektra podcast, Wouter, that there is one horror thing for everybody who's doing corporate gigs. And that is if you are unannounced.
Oh, yeah.
Could you please, because this works the same for DJs, I've had the same experiences. Could you please very quickly explain to the crowd what is so wrong about being unannounced?
Well, when you're doing comedy, you want the undivided attention of the people, and you want the people in the room to know why, A, who you are, B, what you're going to do, and B, why you're there or how long you're going to be there. And if none of those things is brought across appropriately or even at all, then you're just a guy who walks on stage and starts talking. And they didn't go there to see some guy get on stage and start talking. They went there because A, they have to, and B, they want to drink free beer with their co-workers, who can they now finally talk to about, random stuff rather than work. And if you're unannounced, you're not going to have any attention, and you really have to work to get their attention. And you're breaking into their conversation. And that's no basis for them to go and like, hey, he's talking to us. Oh, maybe he's funny. No, hey, he's talking to us and he's interrupting me and he's annoying. Very hard to go from annoying to hilarious.
I can completely understand it. From my experience with corporate gigs, what is even more horror is if there is a whisper. If there is a whisper that, all right, we have this corporate event at the jaarbeurs and it's boring as hell. However, there will be a DJ if the event is done. That always heightens the expectations, especially corporation is one of the bigger companies in the Netherlands. So they expect an arm in there, and Tiesto there, because there is going to be a DJ there. And then there's this dude who is okay music-wise, but hey, there was supposed to be a DJ there. I can imagine that the same goes with comedians. If there is a whisper in the company about, yeah, on the event there will be a comedian, that they are going to make it bigger, and you will never be able to live up expectations.
No. And because, if they only know there's going to be a comedian and it's going to be a surprise is going to be there, I'd rather have them know it's me and them not know me.
Yep.
Than who's going to be a comedian, because you get the exact same thing. They're going to think, it's going to be one of the big Dutch comedians. This might be Hans Theeuwen. No, it's not going to be Hans Theeuwen. You know this company you work for, they're not going to pay that money. And then it's going to be a disappointment. Because they're like, I don't know this guy.
No, that's what I mean. Then the expectations are so high that no matter who you are not going to meet those expectations, because those were indeed the big names they have in mind, and not just the little old me or Wouter Monden they had in mind. Because indeed, then I would rather have them say, all right, we have a random DJ, or for Mixmaster G, for my, I don't care, but name it. Don't be the surprise, because if you're surprised, there's not much you can do.
Just be realistic about what you're going to get. Because if now, and I've learned that from a podcast talking to other comedians who've been doing this way longer than I have, now I give them my introduction. I tell them, this is how I want you to introduce me. And those are big words, and I feel terrible writing them down, because is that me? That sounds like some famous comedian, which I'm not. But it helps getting across the message, saying, hey, you might not know me, but this is what I've done. I know what I'm doing. I know what my job is. You can trust me. Trust me to have these 15 or 20 minutes of your time, and trust me that I'll make you laugh. And even though I'm not one of the biggest names. And I think that might be the same for DJing. If they might not know you by your DJ name, but if someone is introducing you, and can tell the crowd, you know, he's been DJing at this club and he's been working there and he's done these festivals, then they might think, oh, well, I know these clubs, I know these festivals, I don't know him, but he must be good, otherwise he wouldn't be doing those jobs.
That is the same as it works, or I would like it to work if I were booked for corporate gigs these days. Just tell them who I am, and indeed I will write it down what to say.
Can I ask you, because I'm really curious, how does it feel for you as a DJ to do a company gig? Because it's hard for us because we get treated like just background noise every now and again, and as a DJ, you know, no offense, but you are the background music.
Exactly the same.
That must be soul crushing.
And then it depends on what they want you to do. If your job is to cheer up the party, then you have to tell them, all right, listen, that means I'm going to use this PA system. I want to have this area, which we will designate as dance area. There the music must be loud. People cannot talk. I need extra equipment, extra loudspeakers, extra PA, just to make sure that the surroundings have a little bit of sound as well. But I can put the volume down there so people can conversate if they want to. But in general, especially if you are for the lopend buffet, then for sure you cannot get that floor filled because people haven't had any drinks yet. They are hungry, they can smell the satay already, they indeed want to talk to each other. So you are, number one, background noise, and everything you can put on top of that if you were hired to do that, and always discuss that with the people who hire you. Listen, do you want this to become a real party, or do you just have the nothing in the background? And that is the maximum audience participation I as a DJ can accomplish. It is just what you are booked for, but it requires at least very different equipment, for sure, for those two different jobs. And your track selection needs to be different as well, because let's face it, if you are there to be the elevator music man, then indeed you do not play Paradise by the Dashboard Light, which might get some spirits up. So it all depends. Those are not my favorite gigs. I till this date, I am a club DJ. I am born and raised as a club/mobile DJ in the beginning. After that, in Holland, we have the unique situation that most clubs have their own equipment. And Wouter might be amazed about this, because one of the things I've learned from his stream or from his podcast is that you always, or most of the time, have equipment there. There is a technician there, there's a microphone there, PA there, because those are the minimum requirements to do a comedy thing.
And comedians are shitty when it comes down to technical stuff. They couldn't plug in a microphone themselves.
Well, for us DJs in the Netherlands, that stuff is usually there, but especially in the States, most DJs are a mobile DJ by sheer definition. They are lucky if there is a house system, if there is a PA system in the club.
But otherwise, they bring their own PA?
Sometimes they bring, sometimes they bring their own PA. Most likely they bring their own controller and their own laptop, and only the very high tier clubs will have some kind of a CDJ set, but that is not a common thing in the States at all. We Dutchies are entirely spoiled by the fact, and I was that when I was 15 years old. Everywhere I walked in, there were two 1200s there, and there was a mixer there. I was ready to go. I never had to set up anything else. I only had to do it in my very early days, and that was my my home kit, the stuff I used in my bedroom. Then I had to pack it and ask my dad to bring me with the car. And but we are spoiled for that, so that's for sure. Talking about gigs that go wrong, Wouter.
Yes, my favorite.
Can you remember when you were first faced with something that went completely off the rail, that you thought you thought it would go right, all the way right, and it went totally left?
Oh, well, there's one I remember when I got asked to do a show in Belgium. And we went there and we thought it was going to be in a small bar or a small venue or something. And when we got there, there was no bar or anything. It was just a garage, or it looked like the entrance of a garage with a long line of big choppers parked outside. That was already like, okay, this is going to be special in some kind of way. And we went to the door, and the guy who opened it was like, oh yeah, I'll get the guy you need to have. So they had like walkie-talkies, because they were military fans of some sort. And he got on his walkie-talkie and he radioed one of the guys who was supposed to meet us and take us in. He looked like Hagrid from Harry Potter, like this big hairy dude. And he took us in, and it was in Belgium, so they had fries. And he said, well, do you guys want to eat something? He said, yeah, we'll have some fries. He said, you want some sausage? I said, no, I'm vegetarian, so just fries are good. It's really good sausage. You want some sausage? No, we're fine. He said, have some sausage. Okay, we'll have the sausage. That's fine. And then he took us to the back. We went through the entire garage into a garden, and in the back of the garden was an army tent filled with, 20 or something guys just like this in army outfits, a few women there, hardly any lighting, barely a stage, a microphone that was, one of those my first Sony thingies. And we had to do our show, and it was impossible because they were there to chat amongst themselves. We were all very inexperienced. And then you drive there thinking, oh, I'm going to do a show. It's going to be fun. And then you're like, okay, I'm in a tent with 30 military fans somewhere where people don't know that I'm here right now. They could kill me and bury me and no one would find out. That was, I think, I think I was playing for half a year, so I just started out.
That was at the beginning when you started out playing out. I can imagine that things like that, especially if you are just starting out, that they have an influence on you, that they leave a mark on you for the next gig. Because did you have any gigs planned after that experience that you knew, all right, tomorrow I'm going, or next week?
Yeah, well, I think so, because back when I started out, I was very busy always to get new shows. And I say shows, I mean open mics, just being allowed to be on stage for a couple of minutes. So I always made sure I had some gigs in the books. So, but yeah, but you're so naive when you start out. You do the one thing, and you think, oh, that was a shitty gig, but ooh, there's a next one this weekend, and you get anxious to do the next gig. So it does leave a mark, but it, in a positive way, I guess. Of course, you think, oh, I hope it's not going to be the same, but it might be that you think, oh, okay, this was in a tent, but my next gig is an open mic in a comedy club. So I know it's not going to be in a tent. Not going to be with strange military aficionados.
Oh, hopefully.
But yeah, and it leaves a mark in the long run, in a way that you are more aware of where you go, and if you say yes, and if you have the luxury to say no if you get offered a gig, and say, where? In Belgium, in a tent? No, I'm not going to do that. I don't need that show. I don't need the money. No.
You mentioned open mic, which I know from
sorry, I should have explained that.
The podcast is a known phenomena in comedy land. We've got something similar called open decks. Some clubs will say we have an open deck, which means you get like 50 minutes on the decks to do your thing, and that's it. Some with a bell from the comedy scene.
Really?
Yeah, some with a bell. Some without a bell. But could you quickly tell people what an open mic is? Because it is not the same as a comedy night or a stand-up lineup.
No. It's an evening, usually on one of the slower nights, where new comedians just get a couple of minutes to to do their set and be on stage and find out how to do comedy and work on their material. And more professional acts might go there to test some new jokes because there's no pressure. It's not a weekend show. People didn't pay a lot of money to have fun. They know that the bar is set pretty low, and depending on the night, but usually anyone can just sign up and say, hey, I want to try comedy for the first time of my life. I want to get on stage, and they'll say, well, you get 6 to 8 minutes. Have fun.
That's the same as with an open deck, usually the slow night indeed. Now, I also understood from the Elektra podcast, and I found that ridiculous. There is also a thing called open podium, which is not to be.
No, that's an open podium. I don't know if it translates to English, but the difference is an open mic is really for comedy. It's just comedians, it's just comedy. But if you have an open podium, it might be in a theater, but then it's an open stage. The stage is open to literally anyone. So you might be going there, you could even go there as a DJ and say, hey, I want to take all my gear and put it on stage for the 8 minutes I get. And then after you might be an African dance group with middle-aged white women dancing out of rhythm. And then there's a first-time comedian doing horrible jokes about the Second World War. And then it might be me testing out new stuff.
So it's
but it won't be there.
Everything that's taking place can take place on the podium. Now, I also understood that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wouter, that the difference between an open podium and an open mic is an open mic got an MC and an open podium doesn't. Because I remember from the podcast, but I don't know which two it were. There is one thing in the same line that doesn't have an MC necessarily, and the other one always will have an MC.
Yeah, not necessarily. It depends on the night. Usually they both have an MC or a host, and that's usually because on certain nights, the one hosting it is probably also the one organizing it because he really wants a regular spot to be on stage.
Okay. So he's the guy who is blessed to do the emceeing then. If you are doing stand-up comedian, usually that is, for me at least in my experience, is preferably in a bar environment with a small podium there or a very small, it must have a little bit of a niche feeling to it. How do you do the interaction with the audience? Do you like audience interaction at all? Do you expect audience interaction, or do you think, oh, please shut up because I've got my stuff prepared, I've got it all in here, I want to spit it out?
Well, both. I love audience interaction on my terms, but I host a lot of shows, and as an MC, as a compere, you are bound to do audience interaction because it calms a crowd down to show them, we might have a little chat. I might ask you something. You can just give an answer. I won't make you ridiculous. It's safe. And at certain points in the show, I might talk to people, get them to give me an answer so I can move on to the next bit. So I love that. And I love it when we have that chat. But when a crowd gets irritating, or they just keep going on and on and on, even though I'm clearly making it obvious that I don't want you to, then it becomes annoying. But I have my put downs. I generally know how to shut them up, and I enjoy shutting them up. But every now and again, I've had nights where I went to test new material, and I had like 15 minutes. And I walked away, and the crowd had a great show because I was doing audience participation for 12 minutes. And I came off stage thinking, this was a waste of my night because I didn't get to test any new material. I was just doing banter, and it was fun. But I know I can do banter and have fun. I wanted to try out my new jokes, and I couldn't because you kept talking.
All right. I can see that because you want the attention of the public, and if they have their own thing and talking, that's not what you want. We as DJs have something called requests, which is for some DJs a blessing, for some DJs really horror at all, because it will take away the set they have in mind, the building up they want to do.
Sorry, can I stop you just there? Why are they blessings for some DJs? Can you explain that to me?
Because if you don't have a grip on the audience in front of you, you have no idea who is in front of you, and you cannot read the crowd directly because you are just standing there. You are the first opener.
Okay. Because my first instinct was if you have to rely on requests to do a good set, then you're not a good DJ. But it's something that helps you to read the crowd and establish the room.
It can help you if you can't read the room, get you going. Usually the person walking up the booth is kind of the alpha inside the group. So they usually have a following there. And if you can please the alpha, you can get the rest on the floor.
Oh, wow.
But we
never knew that.
But we also have something to prevent requests from happening. Let me show that right here. This will also take care of making sure that you don't have any requests. So that always,
that is brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but it does work. I can tell you that. Now the fun part is I've got more where this is coming from, because Anthony is asking, hey, can Wouter tell 5 minutes of jokes? And maybe Wouter will. I will just ask him. However,
well, come see my show.
Come see his show. That's a better thing. However, I've dove into my picture collection, and that means that we have funny stuff that is DJ related. So let me find out the rest, because usually when you are DJing, it is very hard to hear what the request is. So people pass out notes, they give you notes. Now, first let me show you the most famous request video. It has gone viral across the web. Some of you might know it, some of you might not know it. I know Wouter doesn't know it. Let me introduce you Beth, and Beth has a request to the DJ. It's not my video, let me tell you that, but it is so damn funny that it makes you laugh each and every time. And let me see if I can open it right there. There should be Beth. Put that on the main screen. So that was Beth, and Beth was going for Sambucos. Real story. And then you've got those notes. Those notes are funny as well. But before we go into the notes, let me show some other thing, because we have, of course, the COVID situation across the whole world, and that is hitting comedians as hard as it is hitting DJs. So somebody made a meme out of it, and I think it is still very funny to see what the DJ does in 2019 and in 2020. Just because we can, for the fun of it. Then, of course, you have at the DJ booths always signs from the management. This is one of those signs seen in a DJ booth somewhere around the world, and this was real serious. Now let me go to the...
Have you ever had people coming up to you or trying to get into your DJ booth?
All the time, at least 3 times a gig.
Really?
You have to know that muta, by the way, is bribe in Swedish.
50 cents. What is it, 20 cents?
I don't know. I think it was a chocolate letter even. Sometimes the management will tell you what not to play. This is a sign like that. The funny part is no LMFAO. Of course, LMFAO used to be a band way back, but it's still an internet thingy. So what did they mean? Did they mean no laughing my fucking ass off, or no LMFAO, the group? That is still a question.
Oh yeah, I think no, novelty songs.
Maybe we are.
Or maybe I'm just being too serious, which is not my job. Sorry.
No, you're not into the humor part at all.
I don't like comedy at all.
Comedy, but so let's say you are one of those guys who rips from YouTube, and you've got this request coming up. this was a serious note as well. Play the first track on YouTube. Go to YouTube, start your YouTube. The first track, you have to play it. How do you mean the first track? It's still, people still don't know that. This was a Prince request, and you can guess what the song is that was requested for. Indeed, that was Kiss. That was Kiss.
But I do like that one.
That,
you know, as far as requests go, that's a nice one.
I even have a better one. This one is even better because sometimes people ask really hard, inappropriate music. They can make such a cute notes out of it. Take this one. Oh no, not this one. No, I didn't take it up. Oh, never mind. I didn't say that because it is not there.
Shall I tell you one of the stories of my worst DJing scenarios?
Sure, please do.
Because I hardly ever thought this. You said about playing hard, inappropriate music. When I was 15 or 16 at high school, I was in like the audio video commission, the AV thing. So we got to play music at the high school dance. But I like alternative music and rock. And my friend at the time, he was very into metal, and we love metal. And we knew nothing about dance music or popular music at all. We had to play half an hour of music because everyone had to do their shift. So we always said, well, we'll take the first shift. Nobody wanted to do that because there was no one there. So we always said, well, we'll take that shift from like 7 to 7:30. And we'd just get one of those, you know, mix CDs like TMF Hit Zone 1 to 50,000. We would just put it on, press shuffle, and see whatever song would come up. We would play that song. And then after 3 songs, we're like, okay, that's enough of the shitty music. Now let's put some real music on and play death metal.
You have to understand that the TMF CDs, those were compilation CDs.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant, compilation CDs.
And those were compilation CDs. We had this Dutch MTV sender called TMF.
Yeah.
And you could always tell which artists paid the most to TMF to play their clips because they would be on repeat. And those would be on those TMF CDs. But those, in general, those were the most cheesiest tracks ever, and then they were always edited because they wanted to have 30 tracks on a CD, which means that all the radio versions, which were already short, were even made shorter and shorter.
Wow, never realized that.
TMF CDs. I've got. We were talking about. Let me get my screen right. We were talking about clean versions versus dirty versions or politically correct versions versus not always politically correct. In that thing we've got, let's see, where am I? Because I just saw it. All right, here we are. The original version versus the radio edit requested.
Oh,
yeah, you have to see it right here. Seriously happened.
Wow.
Then, of course, you've got the request that you think, all right, what can I do? Can you play Barbra Streisand? Is this the song by A-Track, Barbra Streisand? Or is this just a song from Barbra Streisand? I don't know. But I thought it was worth saving it. And, of course, you can put prices on playing your requests and then say, all right, Justin Bieber is just a little bit more expensive than the rest. And if it has to be dubstep, then usually sex is involved. So that's something that you also can do. All right, Wouter, we are already approaching 1 hour, and at least I've briefly hit on the subjects I wanted to discuss with you. So let's put the end of the stream for this time around. Thank you very, very much.
You're not going to tell me one of your worst DJing stories? Do we have time for that?
Sure. I always got the time. I can always share that kind of stuff.
Because I'd love to hear just a short one.
It is not necessarily one of the ones I was most surprised. It is not really a horror story, but I was a DJ in the 80s/90s, and especially at the end of the 80s, there was this phenomena called black lights. I don't know if you know what a black light is. Those are those fluorescent, those purplish.
Yeah, the UV
things.
light.
And they light up special colors, and black falls completely dead on it. Now, black light also has another thing that it does, that light, because it will make white transparent. And I had this huge black light set of light bulbs, because those were really light bulbs, set up on top of the speakers. There were the days that speakers were stacked up, and then on top of the speakers you could put some lights on. I had some black lights on top of the speaker array, and there was this girl dancing all the way, all going crazy in white. And I didn't notice that. I came to kind of the highlight of my set, of that particular set, and I thought, all right, let's make it a little bit moody, lights down, then I will bring this track in, and the light guy will put the black lights full on, and you know what happened, because this girl was standing there, music went dead, I was looking what's going to happen. I bring in this track, and that was a remix of a really famous track back at those days. I really don't know which one it was again. But I was bringing in that track. Everybody started dancing. He blasts on those black lights, and that girl was standing naked. She was completely standing naked in front of the crowd. And of course, you always have the annoying things. I touched on that last week as well, that you had DJ booths which didn't have a free entrance, so you couldn't walk out of them. In Hilversum, there was a club where I spent that had a balcony, literally a balcony in the middle of the room where the DJ booth was at, and you have to go on a ladder and you have to climb into that DJ booth. But can you imagine what happened if you had to pee? Because they couldn't put a ladder there because you were playing and the floor was filled, so the ladder couldn't fit there. You couldn't get out, so you needed to have a bucket.
Oh.
And you needed to know that you had a bucket, because nobody else was going to leave their bucket for you. And you need to make sure that you had plenty of waters up there, of course. so that's just a random, and there are gazillion DJ booths like that were completely inaccessible the moment that the crowd was there, because hey, after all, you were the DJ. We were not at the front of the podium of the dance floor back in those days. No, we were just stuffed in a corner, and usually you didn't even have a light on yourself, because you were just the guy responsible for the music. DJing wasn't really a thing when I started out. It became a thing when I was already doing it, and lucky enough for that. Anthony Brown is chiming in. I once had a corporate Christmas gig. A guy wrote a $20 note asking, could you play some Bhangra music? Digging deep, found some, played it straight away. He did traditional dance and everyone went mad. Full dance floor, gave him back the cash on the best ending of a gig. Yeah, sometimes stuff like that happened. And that's what what I meant with requests are sometimes a blessing, because sometimes people come up with requests of tracks you really didn't think of, because let's face it, us DJs usually, of course, we've got all the music in the world, especially since we have streaming services at our disposal, but you really work from like 3,000, 4,000 track stops. That is like your base where you work from. And there's nothing bad with that, because you can just make variations and be creative with that as well as you can do with 100,000 tracks. But of course, the world is much bigger than those 4,000 tracks that are on your USB. And if somebody comes up with a request and that works, then it's just an extra one for the 4,000 tracks. But it is also a welcome challenge for you. All right, how can I do this? And if it goes wrong, how can I escape from it very quickly? Wouter, again, thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me.
For being me. Everybody, I will put a link to the Elektra podcasts of Wouter in the remarks under the video, as well as the two English language Elektra podcast, so you can really hear what Wouter usually does in his podcasts, which can be really hilarious. So I highly recommend it. Next week, usual stream. I'm not going to rate on Twitch right now because I have a guest on and I don't want to bore him with finding out who we are going to rate into. Thank you for watching. If you like what I'm doing, give the video the thumbs up and share the link with all the people you like and love. Thank you for watching again, folks. Mixmaster G, out.